Hey friends, my name is Gabrielle and welcome to FrumiousReads, and I am bringing back a challenge. Now, this isn't like a booktube or TikTok, book talk challenge type of thing. This is a challenge I gave myself way back in the year of 2016, almost exactly 6 years ago. And I decided that in 2016, I was going to read a book every single day for the entire year. Obviously, that was a big challenge and it took like a lot of willpower and it took a lot of scheduling, and I had to have a lot of books to do it too. That was a problem back then. I didn't have enough books to read a book every day. Now I have come up with a different problem. I have too many books. No, I'm sorry, that was wrong. I have a lot of books and I haven't read a lot of those books. I have an entire library full of books here with books that I keep telling myself I'm going to read that I never actually do read. Instead, I just buy more books. Now, I feel like this is a problem that many book lovers have, but I'm going to do something about it. In order to motivate myself to read at least most of the books in here, I've decided for the next 6 months, from June 1st until January 1st of 2023, I'm going to read a book every single day. Not quite as long of a commitment as it was in 2016, but that's because I'm also an actual adult now and I have like a full-time job, and this is my week 1 wrap-up video. Surprise! I started on Wednesday, June 1st, so let's go ahead and look at the books that I read this first week. Alright, so starting off with Wednesday, June 1st, I actually read Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll. I found this really cute little copy and I just really like the scholastic reader editions of the books, and just because I love the covers and I think they look really fun, but it still has all the original drawings in it, so I just thought that this would be a fun one to give a reread and a good way to kind of just start off this new challenge. Why not go back to my Alice in Wonderland roots, since that was really the inspiration of the channel. So I reread Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll just to kind of get in the right mindset of this week. Of course, I love this book. I love Lewis Carroll. I love everything Alice in Wonderland related, so obviously I really enjoyed this. And once again, if you guys have not read the Alice in Wonderland original and the Through the Looking Glass, then you definitely should, because like they're like classics and they're amazing. They're actually good classics too, which is a very important detail. The next book I read tore me to pieces, and it honestly, it came out a while ago, so I'm a little bit late on the bandwagon here, but I read They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. This book is so good. 5 out of 5 stars. I don't even know how to rate this book. I don't have ratings. This is just a very good book. Basically, two guys, Mateo Torres and Rufus Demetrio, are both given 24 hours to live. Now they don't know each other at first by some higher unknown agency where they don't really understand how they know when people only have 24 hours to live, but they just know that with a certainty, sometime in the next 24 hours you are going to die. Mateo and Rufus are both given these end-of-life calls, which are courtesy calls to all citizens that they get when their time is up, basically, and it chronicles their journey as they go about their last day. Now eventually they both kind of sign up for this thing called Last Friends Inc., where people who are known as the Death Dayers are able to go online, and if they don't have any family or friends in the area, they can find someone to spend their last day with. Now Mateo and Rufus both end up with each other as their Death Day friends, and they both try and make their last day as meaningful as possible. And honestly, it's just, you go in knowing, in the title it's a spoiler, like they both die at the end, but you go in hoping that somehow they're going to be the ones that make it. It comes to terms a lot with like the reality of dying and mortality, but also how to really live every moment like it's your last. And one of my favorite things about this book is the amount of, God, I don't know what the official term is, but when there is a hint of something that's foreshadowed and then it's all tied back later on in the book. So there's things that are foreshadowed in the beginning of the book that are then tied into each other and really made clear at the end of the book, but it's so subtly done that sometimes you don't even realize until these things happen what the author was leading up to. So really good book, definitely worth the hype. I love this book so much, and it's probably gonna be one of my new favorites of 2022, even because this is probably one of the best books that I've read so far this year, and it's one that got me out of a reading slump because it was so good and so well written. The next book I read was just kind of a meh book for me, honestly. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but it was Sisters of Sword and Song by Rebecca Ross. Now, I had high hopes for this book. It's about two sisters who are reunited. Evadne is reunited with her older sister, Halcyon, who has been serving in the Queen's army, but Halcyon returns a day early and is on the run and has been charged with murder. Evadne, known as Ava, attempts to help her sister because Halcyon is charged with 5 years of hard labor and 5 years imprisonment, as well as 5 years of serving the house that she has wronged. Evadne volunteers to serve the house that she has wronged in her sister's stead to figure out what really happened, because she has a feeling that this is not the full story. Now, and basically both sisters have to work together, but while they're separated, and really there's a lot of kind of like political intrigue and things happening behind the scene. Now, this does have elements of magic in it, which I did not realize it would just based on the summary, but once it starts, you really kind of get the ideas of magic and like how it works in this world. And I really wanted to like this book. It starts off really strong. It starts off with like Halcyon coming home and Ava finding out that she is on the run and wanted, and kind of like going into her trial and immediately being sentenced. But after that point, I feel like it gets really stagnant. It's just kind of like Halcyon, while she's trying to figure out what happened while also serving her time at the work camp, and Ava trying to figure out what's going on while serving in the house that Halcyon wronged, who just happens to be her Lord Commander for the army that she was in. It's just like, it sounds so good, and it's still like a good book, but just for me, I feel like the beginning was so action-packed, and then it immediately got stagnant until like almost until the very end, when it finally like picks back up again. So just kind of like I had a strong beginning, a weak middle, and then a decent ending is how I would break this book down with no spoilers. Now, the next book I read was actually just kind of like a fun book I picked up a while ago at a book sale, and I never really looked through it, but it is actually called Knives and Ink, Chefs and the Stories Behind Their Tattoos with Recipes. It's by Isaac Fitzgerald and Wendy McNaughton. Sorry, I had to read that off because that was a lot. But basically it goes through different chefs and famous, not famous, different restaurants, different people around the world, and kind of goes through what their tattoos mean to them, and kind of like their little story. So it's really interesting to go through and see how many of the chefs have food related ones versus like people who just have like inspirational, and kind of what either inspired them to get the tattoo, how it affects their work, how it affects their cooking, and really cool like recipes in there. Like for one example, there is Nick Venezia's jalapeno cast iron cornbread, which sounds really good, and it gives you like a recipe right here. Looks really cool, and also shows you the tattoo that he has, which is a Sharpie, which makes sense because I'm dating a chef and he always has Sharpies, and I think that's a chef thing. So yeah, it's just kind of like a fun different take on an autobiographical book. It's like a mix of a cookbook and an autobiography, because it has the chefs and their stories, but it also has cool recipes. So if you're a cook, or you know someone who's a cook and you're looking for something kind of fun and cool to get them, definitely recommend this one. Now, the last 3 books that I read this week were Children of Eden by Joey Graceffa, Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie, and I had to look up the last one, Gate of Thread and Stone by Lori M. Lee. I actually read the Children of Eden by Joey Graceffa was actually surprisingly good. It's very much a take on kind of like a apocalyptic end of the world where like nature is destroyed and there's a whole new society, and society is built on that fact that there is no more nature, there's no way to survive outside of the hub that they've built, and kind of what it means for the main character when she realizes that not all is as it seems, and she finds out that there's more that the government's been hiding, and becomes kind of part of this revolution. Overall, I was actually really surprised. I didn't have a lot of high hopes going into it, but I found that the story itself was interesting. The main character and the love interest for me were kind of just like not things I was super into, and I kind of found myself kind of like zoning out a little bit almost whenever their interactions happened, but it was still a decent story. I'd have to say that this was for me it would be like a 3 out of 5 star read, just because it was interesting and I liked the idea of it, but kind of like with the Sisters of Sword and Song, I felt like it dragged and it didn't really keep me engaged. So that's my overall review of it. In Gates of Thread and Stone, there is only one person who's supposed to possess magic, and when Kai herself has magic and grows up having magic, it's up to her and her kind of adopted brother Reeve to keep themselves secret and keep themselves safe and out of this man's hands because they can be punished. Reeve ends up being taken, and Kai realizes that if she stays silent and if she stays hidden, her brother will be punished. So she decides to come out of hiding and kind of join a rebellion group that's happening. And as she does, she's forced to learn more about her magic, herself, her relationship with her brother, and her friendships that she's made. And overall, I really like the writing of this book. It's one of those weird books where I really enjoyed the writing. I really enjoyed the pacing. The story was super interesting. It has really cool powers and different magical abilities. Like Kai's ability is to manipulate threads of time. And I think that's just so cool. It's so interesting. But it's almost like I had a disconnect from the main character and from like the character's love interest. You know, like it was one of those things where it's like, I feel like I really enjoyed Kai in the beginning, but when she was interacting with like the love interest, I almost like lost interest in her. I don't know, I just lost interest in that aspect of it. But I really enjoyed this book. This one was one that I picked up for free from a little free library, and I just read it and on a whim, and I really enjoyed it. It was very good, and so definitely want to check out more books by Lori Emily. And this is also the first in a series, so I have a feeling I'm going to be catching up with the rest of the books of the series too and seeing how all that goes. I really enjoyed this book. It was a surprising like 4 out of 5 stars for me. And finally, the last book that I read this week, which is one that I'm currently finishing, was the audiobook. So didn't physically read it, but more listen to it, for Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. This is one of those classic books where I feel like I've always tried to read it, but I just never really had the time to sit down and physically read it. And since my current job requires me to like drive around so much, I was able to listen to the audiobook version on YouTube. Granted, I also have a problem with audiobooks because I feel like they go so slow, so I had to like speed up the narration to like a 1.25 or 1.5. But once I did that, I really enjoyed the book. I thought it was really good. It was fun to kind of compare what I remember of the childhood movie I grew up with, the Disney version, with what happens in the book. And it was really, really interesting. I liked it, and I liked kind of this, I liked getting to finally read the original that's inspired so many stories and retellings behind it. Another classic I would actually recommend reading would be Peter Pan. But yeah, so those are all the books that I read this week. I hope you guys enjoyed my little wrap up, and I'm looking forward to getting back into this challenge because I feel like I've gotten out of reading so much lately, and I really want something that'll bring me back into reading. You know, I kind of fell out of it when I started doing the podcast stuff, and since then, between working and podcasting, it's been hard to like make time to read books and do videos. So I'm hoping this will kind of help be the little jump that I need to get back into it. But that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I mentioned in the comments down below, and make sure you check out my blog because that's where I'm going to be posting a lot of the books that I read daily, as well as on TikTok. Thanks so much for watching, and I will talk to you later. Okay. Bye.